Hello, and welcome to Tip of the Day for Single Moms of Faith. I am Dr. Chanel Serano, and I am coming to you with the last episode of the series that is related to domestic violence awareness. And so, for those of you who do not know, October was the month for domestic violence awareness. And so I started a series where I shared my personal journey in an abusive relationship, followed by an episode on defining the types of abuse that are commonly seen and not so much commonly seen in abusive relationships. My third episode was on the cycle of domestic violence. And this final video or episode is now going to be on healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, abusive relationships, and the development of a safety plan. A little bit about myself again. I am Dr. Chanel Serano. I am a published author of Co-Parenting with Christ, 9 Steps to Achieving Harmony, as well as my upcoming book that will be launching soon is called All God Needs Is Your Yes. I'm also the blogger or the content creator for the blog Doing Life with Christ, where I give tips for, especially for women of faith in all areas from leadership to parenting, to career, to mentorship. So everything in between. I am also the founder of Esther's Daughters LLC, and that is a faith-based organization that is geared towards the needs of single mamas, as well as coming alongside organizations who serve and assist single moms. So if you are a faith-based organization and you are seeking to either develop a single mom's ministry curriculum or program, I am your person. As well as if you have an existing program that's geared towards single moms and you're wanting to revamp, I also come alongside you with a series of courses as well as strategy calls to assist you in revamping that program and tailor it to the needs of single moms of your organization. And lastly, I am involved in the helping profession. I have been in the helping profession for approximately 26, 27 years with my current position in management and leadership. And also, I am the mom of a great young man, Isaiah, who is 21. And so, really, Tips of the Day for Single Moms of Faith is an opportunity for me to come alongside other single moms, women in general, but especially for my single moms. And I share parts of my personal journey, walking life through as a single mom of faith, as well as through research that I've conducted, and that is both academically as well as being in the field that I'm in. So I bring a lot of information to you, and so I pray that it is helpful. And now we'll get right started into this episode. Again, it is the fourth and final video, unless any special requests for any of you out there. This one, again, is talking about relationships and what is considered healthy, unhealthy, abusive relationships, and ending the video with the development of a safety plan or what that should look like should you find yourself in this type of situation, an abusive environment or abusive relationship. Okay. So a couple areas that I received and did some research in. So I definitely will be putting that information in the comments below on additional sites that you can go to for resources and support as well. And that is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, as well as a website called Care for Trauma. And so I thought that was a really interesting site as they provide an actual template where you can go on and download the template and truly tailor the safety plan to the needs of you. And if you have children, you can definitely tailor it to you and your family. And so, as I mentioned, I will put that in the comments below. So let's get right into relationships. And I get this question a lot, especially since I began this series. A lot of women have reached out to me, both women who I know as well as women who I do not know, and have reached out to me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, as well as other social media platforms, sharing their experiences of being in abusive relationships now as women, as well as individuals who reached out to me sharing that they were raised in homes where there was an abusive dynamic between their parents, and how that had an impact on them and also had an impact on the relationships that they themselves got into as adults. And so really my desire for wanting to bring awareness in this way of domestic violence is to stop the cycle. And domestic violence and this type of behavior is a learned behavior. And so once we're able to identify not only as the abuser, but also the individual who is unfortunately on the other end, who is the survivor. Some refer to as victim. I prefer the term survivor of domestic violence. And so this brings a lot of questions up, and really allowing us to delve into the dynamic of these type of relationships, and what to look for, triggers, patterns, observations. Okay. So I wanted to start off with the definition about healthy, the term healthy and what that means. And so I'm looking here to make sure that I refer to my notes. I want to make sure that my information is as accurate as possible. And so healthy is a state of complete mental, physical, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And so when we look at healthy relationships, we're really looking at the quality of that relationship. Okay. So not only health, as it says here, but the quality, is it a healthy relationship, an unhealthy relationship, an abusive relationship? And what qualities um, uh, should you look at? And what types of behavior should you look at to determine whether it's a healthy, unhealthy, or abusive relationship? And so a couple things, and these are just a few areas and a few suggestions, but definitely also for yourself, it's important that you and your partner determine what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is abusive. And so really being a part of this process, being engaged in your own self-care, being engaged in how you choose to move forward in relationships, and what is a no, and what is okay, what is appropriate, what you're willing to consent to, and boundaries that you need to develop within your relationship. And this is not only, even though I'm focusing on intimate relationships, this is in any relationship, friendship relationships, relationships within your family, etc. So I welcome you to really, after this video, or even during this video, to really sit down and start to jot down on different areas that you feel that you need to set boundaries around, and what is healthy and feel right and spiritually appropriate for you. Okay. So a couple things here as you're looking at healthy relationships, and some things to consider. One of the main things is communication. So the quality of the communication would let you know whether you're in a healthy relationship, or whether you need to um, explore whether, okay, this may be a tad bit unhealthy, or if it's purely an abusive relationship, and early on. So communication that includes not only in how they speak to you or how you both speak to each other, it's about that delivery, the approach, active listening. Is active listening engaging, or being engaged in this relationship where it is reciprocal? So you share your heart, you share your thoughts, your opinions. There is space for you to do that, and where you're not feeling judged or being disrespected for sharing your perspective, as well as you're providing space for the other individual to share their views, their thoughts, their perspective on something, especially when it comes to making decisions. And so, when it comes to making decisions, being able to communicate both of your perspectives, and you may agree to disagree, and that's okay. For some decisions, some things you do have to come to a hardcore decision on. But again, the point is in having that communication, what type of communication? And are you able to fully share your thoughts and your views and the other individual? And so sometimes I will hear, I am listening not for what they're actually saying, what the other person is saying to me, but I'm listening to respond. And so when you're coming from that angle, you're not really engaging in active listening. That's more of a defense mechanism where you are waiting for them to say something that may get you riled up or get you upset, and then you're ready to attack. Or the other person feels that way towards you, or does not really listen to what you're saying, but is really listening to your response so they can quickly tear it down. That is not healthy communication. Okay, so some things to think about. Also, healthy relationships involve self-awareness. And especially some of the different areas that I have done some research on pertaining to this and what determines a healthy, unhealthy, abusive relationship is that level of self-awareness and being mindful of areas that you need to improve on, as well as, and this is not necessarily in an abusive relationship per se, but in relationships, period. It's important that you engage in the self-awareness process and your partner engages in self-awareness. And so just in life generally, we are not the same person that we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, just based on life and based on experiences and many factors that have an impact on our worldview. And so it is important that, as with any area in your life, it is just as important that in your relationship, in your marriage, that you're constantly engaging in self-awareness, identifying areas, or even if your partner identifies areas where, I notice the way you communicate with me is a little aggressive or a little harsh. I would appreciate it. It makes me feel this way. I would appreciate it if you would deliver your message with a quieter tone, or, more respectful, whatever that conversation looks like. But again, healthy relationships involve a level of self-awareness for both of you and an understanding that you're constantly evolving for the better, not changing to simply change because the other person wants you to change, because now we're delving into unhealthy and abusive. But if there are areas that you have identified as unhealthy, that you feel, I need to improve in this area, that is part of self-awareness and saying, I want to improve in this area, and taking the next necessary steps. That may be engaging in therapy. Okay. That may be clinical therapy as well as spiritual counseling. So there's various types of interventions that you can engage in as well as part of that self-awareness process. Another indicator of a healthy relationship is respect, respect across the board. And so I mentioned earlier in the video about boundaries. And so boundaries is important. And those standards that you have for yourself and for the relationship. But boundaries as far as what feels appropriate to you. And also knowing and understanding that it's different for everyone. What may feel appropriate for one person may not feel as appropriate or comfortable for someone else. And so it's important to have that conversation early on, especially for those who are couples of faith, who are courting, and having that conversation of boundaries early on about, especially if you, as a Christian couple, engaging in a celibate relationship where you're abstaining from sex. And so establishing those boundaries early on what that looks like for both of you. So again, establishing boundaries is a part of respect and having that in a healthy relationship. Now, when we're delving and moving towards, there's a spectrum. You have your healthy relationship, your unhealthy, and then you have your abusive relationship. And so when you're in a healthy relationship and boundaries, respect is needed, it's important. And now we start to shift down the spectrum where the boundaries that you have set in place are not being respected. Now we're stepping into unhealthy relationships, an unhealthy relationship. Okay. And that opens the door for communication. And if that continues to where your boundaries, your emotions, your thoughts are not being respected, then now we're looking into a different dynamic that's no longer healthy. Okay. Empathy. Empathy is very important as well. And that purely is having emotional intelligence, a level of compassion towards the individual for both of you. It's important. And so oftentimes what I have seen when it comes to being in abusive relationships, that level of empathy is not there, or it can be a manipulative tactic, especially if you remember in the cycle of abuse in the domestic violence cycle or in an abusive relationship. When you're talking about empathy, it may come into play after the incident of violence. And now that we're on the downside, if you will, the incident of violence has occurred. And now they're trying to woo the individual. The abuser is now trying to get back in the good graces, if you will, of the survivor. And so a manipulative tactic is to appear as though you're empathetic to the survivor. And this is in the abuser's perspective or mindset. And so where you'll see it's not empathy at all. But if anything, it is used as a manipulative tactic. But true, genuine empathy is having compassion and having that emotional intelligence in your relationship. And so as your partner is experiencing life, as you're experiencing life, it is important to allow those emotions to come through. You still have to be careful in how you deliver and how you approach situations with your partner, the tone, your gestures, etc. But empathy, again, is a very important part of a healthy relationship. Do you have similar values and goals? Okay. Decision making. What does that decision making process look like? In healthy relationships, and again, it can vary depending on culture, depending on your worldview. But when it comes to decision making process and being able to, and again, could be cultural because this is more of a Western perspective, but where the decision is made between both of you, between both partners. And when we delve into an unhealthy relationship, we're looking at more so where one individual is wanting to take control over all of the decision making, as opposed to even getting information from, or let's say you're in a relationship and you're having a conversation with someone, or you're having a conversation with your significant other, and a decision is needing to be made. And they ask you how you feel about this. I need to make this decision, or we need to make this decision pertaining to our household, the finances. Maybe it's parenting. And one person has one view on parenting, the other one has a different view on parenting. And so coming together and making that decision together, or especially if you come from a biblical worldview, and this is where the role of and the biblical principle of submission is also discussed as well. And even that in itself can look different for each couple, each Christian couple, where there may be a decision that is needed to be made, and where they may solicit feedback and the thoughts of the woman in the relationship, and they're incorporating that, or the man as the covering, incorporating the thoughts, the opinion, the suggestions from their wife, and then making the ultimate decision as the head. Again, this is more biblical worldview. Or some Christian couples, where again it is making the decision, but the husband may not necessarily make the ultimate decision. It is a decision for both to make together. So it really depends also on how you apply that principle in your relationship, in your household. Okay. And again, I focus primarily on healthy relationships, but you'll notice, as I mentioned, there's a spectrum from healthy to unhealthy to abusive relationships. And when you're moving towards unhealthy, you're starting to observe where you're only spending time together, as opposed to it's okay to have some personal time. Healthy relationships do that. And so having some personal time for yourself, maybe having some time to go hang out with your friends or a spa day, and for men as well. And so that is a conversation within that relationship, and you all have to determine what's appropriate for your relationship, for your marriage. It looks different for everyone. But only spending time with each other. Now we delve into unhealthy when you're only wanting to spend time together. And now we're also delving into an abusive relationship when that becomes controlled, where it is an intentional effort to isolate you or to isolate a partner from their friends, from their family. And it purely is only staying within the home with that individual, where the abuser is, or the perpetrator is monitoring all of the individual's time, all of their partner's time. When they go to the grocery store, they are timing how long it is before they return. And so a lot of these questions we're having to really think about when you're in relationships and what is healthy, unhealthy, and abusive. Some other indicators of an abusive relationship include abuse, mistreatment, isolation, when the perpetrator is not accountable for their actions. And oftentimes we'll put that on their partner, we'll blame their partner for the perpetrator's behavior. You made me do this. And so, again, being very mindful, being observant early on in the dating phase, in the courtship phase, observing things that may not just sit well with you. Or sometimes I hear, after being in the relationship for some time or being married, and I didn't begin to really see these patterns until now. Oftentimes, more times than not, there's been indicators along the way. And so really, especially as believers and having a biblical worldview, it is vital to pray your way through. And I mean that from the beginning of the dating courtship phase. And so really seeking God in these relationships. And I know for myself, in relationships where in the dating phase, I began praying early on. Is this person a good fit for me and my home? Am I a good fit for them? And in more cases than not, once I prayed and gave it to the Lord, the answer was given within days. And so that is a story for another day. But in several, actually in 2 or 3 different relationships in which I was dating someone, and early on, once I sought the Lord, there were some areas that was concerning for me. And so immediately went into prayer, and the answers were given. And so I ended those relationships as quickly as possible. So I hope that helps. Now I want to shift into development of a safety plan, as I had mentioned as well. And so with the development of a safety plan, you want to be mindful of a couple of things, and allow me to explain what a safety plan is. So when being in an abusive relationship or an abusive environment, it is vital, if you're able to develop a plan that allows you, and if you have children, it allows you and your children to safely exit the abusive relationship, the abusive environment. And that takes a lot of different coordinated steps. And it's not an easy journey, but it also depends on the situation that you're in. And that will determine how elaborate your safety plan needs to be. I've seen some situations where the family had to uproot completely once they were able to sneak out of the home. They had to quickly uproot, and not just in a different neighborhood or a different city, but literally moved to another state and had a safety plan in place, had a support system, had individuals there to receive them in the next state. Some involve having to change your name. And so there's a lot of different factors depending on what the specific dynamics are within your situation. Again, that will determine how elaborate your safety plan needs to be. And so if that is the case for you, please feel free to reach out to me so that I can assist you and also provide additional support and resources for you. So the safety plan is, number one, to improve your safety. And if there's children involved, to also improve the safety of your children, as well as to help you to prepare. So it's really a tool for preparedness, to prepare you from transitioning from where you are in this abusive relationship, abusive environment, into a safe environment. And so you are preparing as much as you can. Also, it allows you as a survivor to regain control. Vital. Where in abusive relationships, that control has been taken from you. And so, or made you feel as though that control has been taken from you. And so when you're developing a safety plan, it allows you to regain that control and also empowers you, because you are making the decisions for both you and your children, if children are involved, as well as to put resources and support in place. And that is another part of the safety plan. Okay, because as you're planning this safety plan in your current situation, that may not be ideal, that is an abusive relationship or abusive environment, you're planning for right now, but also down the line. What does this look like? What systems do I need to put in place today that's going to help me and my family 6 months from now, a year from now? Okay, some things to consider. P.O. box. Okay, making sure that, and again, it depends on your specific situation, but I suggest always a P.O. box and not necessarily under your name. If you have family, or I would even venture to say friends or individuals who your partner does not know. And I know this can be a very difficult conversation, very difficult information to have others know about you. And so, because oftentimes the perpetrator will use tactics of making you feel ashamed or feel guilty. And so even coming in with that mindset and needing to share certain levels of information to develop your safety plan, you may feel uncomfortable with. And so being mindful of that, but also knowing individuals who you can truly trust. I usually like to say individuals who your partner does not know, who the perpetrator does not know. Okay, and not local, because once you leave, depending on the behavior of the abuser, may or may not go to people whom your partner, the perpetrator, knows. That can include family, that can include friends as well. So again, I suggest developing a support system of individuals who are not local and someone who your significant other does not know. So again, a P.O. box, and preferably maybe under a friend's name in a different area, is helpful, as well as a prepaid cell phone and data card. And again, as you're getting these things in place, I would suggest not housing them at your home, having a separate area as you're creating copies of different documents and getting things ready for you. And again, if you have children involved, this could include having extra clothes in that area or housed at a different location. So prepaid phone and data card, your bank accounts, your ID, your social security cards, if the children are needing to go to a different school. So these are things that you really want to think about, things that bring identification, things that you would need to start a new account and to start a new job. So definitely take into account how to get these items or additional copies as well. Okay, your bank accounts, looking at whether you share bank accounts, do you have a separate bank account? Cash is always key, in my opinion. And so, but if that is being monitored, even that you have to be very careful about, again, depending on the dynamics of the situation that you're in. But cash, definitely, because it's not something that is easily trackable, okay, or traceable. as well as gathering, as I mentioned, gathering essential documents, secure your communication with those within your support system, as well as getting to know the different resources in your area, shelters, domestic violence shelters, those type of resources, as well as if you're involved in any in the ministry or involved in your church, but really developing a sound support system of individuals, not a lot, but of individuals who you truly can trust with information, as well as who can help you in a safe way, and making sure that they maintain your well-being, and that they're not sharing information to the perpetrator either. And so there's a lot of different factors that come into play. But also, as you're transitioning into your new place, or maybe you're staying in your place and they're leaving, the perpetrator is leaving, you have to be mindful of the safety of your current place. So that can include changing your locks, as well as passwords for any shared accounts, checking your accounts often, checking your credit, your with the credit bureaus as well, checking your identity. So again, anything that is being shared, being mindful of that, and essentially creating a separate line, a separate way for yourself, separate accounts for yourself moving forward. And knowing that a safety plan, it changes, it can change, it can adjust. It does not have to be one way. Tailor it to your specific needs and the needs of your family. And not only looking at where you are today, but also looking at where you and your family will be in 6 months to a year. What does the aftercare of leaving an abusive relationship look like? That can include clinical therapy, that can include your church family. And I've also seen where, with churches, where the couple both attended one particular church, and one of the partners was abusive, and the family members, or I'm sorry, the church members, once they found out that the couple was no longer together, in this particular case, the husband was the perpetrator and the wife was a survivor of the abuse. And the church family immediately took the side of the husband, and he was a perpetrator because, especially when you're dealing with narcissistic personality disorder, and different types of dynamics there, they can definitely portray themselves in one particular way to society, to the world. But within the home, you see the true identity of that individual. And so I've seen several situations where the survivor no longer had the support of the church because of this interesting dynamic. Although unrealistic dynamic, it still was a situation at hand until several years later, where the truth came out. So again, looking at that, all the areas in which you share your life together, and how you can best transition out of this environment, out of this abusive relationship, is vital. So I hope that this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, comments, you're more than welcome to drop in the comments below, or you're more than willing, or more than welcome to send me a DM if you have any specific questions or needing some assistance, and I will definitely be able to lend you support and some resources as well. So I pray for you, and remember that, as with anything, parenting, life is not a destination. It is most definitely a journey. So God bless you, and take care.